I want to thank everybody who are interested in this topic, who can take the time, come to join us. I know this is a very busy time of the semester, and I really appreciate you made all the way and make it. All right, so the topic of our presentation today is neighborhood-based sustainable food waste management. This is a quick outline of our 1 hour presentation, hopefully shorter, so you can all get dismissed. So I'll start with a background of the significance of food waste management and its connection with sustainability. And then talking about the current practice, problems, and the gaps. That's our research motivation. We'll get into a business, propose the research framework, and research questions, and I will discuss about the pilot study that I conducted through the sponsorship of GCI in the UIC neighborhood, and discuss the initial results of my modeling, and then also identify the challenges simply using the common data sets we use in urban planning field. And then Professor Cruz would continue to elaborate on those specific data challenges, and she will also demonstrate data integration, realization, analytic tool that her entire team has been developing, and how the tool could be potentially applied in this specific issue of food waste management, and we will conclude with the ongoing future work and the significance of work. All right. So everybody of us eat, drink, pee, poop every day, and not everybody else actually exactly understand the significance of food waste. 70 billion pounds of food waste are generated each year in the U.S., and the annual economic loss is over $165 billion just in the U.S., and it could be up to $50 billion globally. Generally speaking, about 1/3 of the food that was produced, manufactured, transported, distributed, and cooked for this consumption actually is lost or wasted, directly went to landfill sites. Less than 3% of food waste is currently recovered or reused, meaning 97% of them, all of the food we discard actually went to disposal sites. And food waste is the largest component in municipal solid waste stream. You may have thought about paper, but paper has many types. But if we think about one single component, that is food waste in the municipal solid waste stream. And apparently it contributes to methane, greenhouse emissions. And what makes it more complicated is liquid. So it actually contributes mostly to the decomposition process, and also involves a lot of health and environmental pollution concerns. We'll get to a little more afterwards. It's not just food waste. Think about the cycle of the food system. Basically, what we have wasted in terms of waste have engaged 30% of the productive agricultural land. And it also consumes about 1/4 of the fresh water we all use, and it's equivalent to about 300 million barrels of oil each year. And it's not just the waste. Again, I want to emphasize that when you connect it to the production, processing, distribution, and the retail process, what will waste? If just 1 pound, just 1 ounce, may not be just that one single ounce. What we mean here is really the life cycle impact of the food loss and the waste, as we show here, from production to handling, storage, processing, packaging, distributing, marketing, consumption. Each of these stages actually generates waste, and all types of waste that can be actually edible and for multiple purposes. We don't have a lot of time today, but this shows you a quick overview of the potential uses of the waste that is generated through the food chain. All right, now it's time for us to ask who are contributing to this problem. And apparently, we will likely to contribute to industrial sectors, to the universities like us right here, grocery stores, service restaurants, and both food service restaurant and quick service restaurant. However, look at this. Half of this pie is actually residents, and each of us actually is contributing to it. In a more consolidated way, here if we divide into production, distribution, and the consumption process, and consumption still counts towards the majority of the food waste in the process. And remember, for all the food waste we generated, first of all, for all the food we consume, actually they need to be produced and distributed. So we indirectly contribute to the waste through those processes as well. Now we have talked about the scale of food waste generation. At the same time, we cannot ignore the fact 1 in 6 Americans right now still do not have enough food every day. And studies have shown if the food waste generated in the US and Europe together are reused, they actually could feed the world 3 times all over. And if we think about the food waste situation from a historical perspective, back in 1970s, only 900 calories are needed for each person a day. And the studies show today, may associated with the obesity issue, have 1,400 calories associated with a person. So that's to say, if we consider the difference between the calorie needs and the consumption back into the 1970s, and then that means 2 billion people could be fed simply by saving the calories we are actually maybe over-consuming nowadays. This is a less attended and studied issue. No phosphorus, no food. And people have rarely realized we do need the phosphorus to have the food through the agricultural production process, and this is one of the essential nutrients that is supporting the growth of humans and ecosystems. The phosphorus stock or reserve is estimated to peak around 2030, and then you see a sharp drop. Because this is a non-renewable resource, and people have rarely paid attention to this essential nutrition. When it connects to a larger picture, say back into 1950s, we see given the technology advancement, and we have seen increasing stock in terms of phosphorus. This is the dark red color here, the area here. So people actually wasn't quite worried about it until very lately, scientists figured, oh, in the coming decades, we'll see dramatic increase in terms of the reserve of phosphorus from the mining process. So what do scientists expect to get increasing supply of phosphorus? Reuse human and animal manure, human food waste here. And also, this is from supply side. From demand side, basically increase efficiency. If you look at the chart, you may think, all right, if we just reduce food waste, it may not solve a lot of problems. However, remember all of these issues in terms of agriculture, in terms of the mining, fertilizer process, food chain, and all of this related to food waste. Meaning, when we reduce the food waste, actually when we intend or aim or purposely reduce food waste, we could reduce waste from the source, from the origin of the issue. So we could reduce the volume through the lab chain. Talking about urban food waste management, actually we see additional and even more complex challenges. First is the mixed generation type. Most of the times, if you think about solid waste management, it is very material specific, and we need to have a relatively good idea in terms of the quantity and the quality of the stuff. But in terms of the food waste, from business, residential institution, industrial sector, as you could imagine, the types of food waste are actually very different, and the quality is very different too. To give you a simple example, if you think about the industrial process, meat packaging plant. So they could use the materials directly for animal feed, could directly use for fertilizers, and some of them actually could be reused. But for some of the residents, we are actually doing both so-called pre-consumer waste and post-consumer waste, meaning when we cut the celery, a lot of people just simply cut the top of it, cut the end of it, although they are still edible, you just may not care about that when you eat the raw salad. That's pre-consumer waste part of it. And then we also may generate post-consumer waste, meaning we cooked 1 pound of it, but we may finish only 2/3 of it. Then we got 1/3 actually either rotten or on the leftover plates. So those are very different types of food waste, and this generates the difficulty in terms of logistic and technical management of food waste. Collection complexity. Apparently, you don't want a truck that collects stinky, smelly food waste around your alley of the neighborhood, right? So that means collection may not be always achieve economy scale, meaning big trucks may not be moved around, and you do have the time sensitivity issue in terms of collection. Space constraints, for single-family housing, likely they could set up a backyard composting equipment, but for urban residents, you rarely have that space capacity and the time to care about this. Odor is an issue, and together with the warming concerns, meaning insects and pest concerns. Talking about this issue, I can tell you a story right at UIC. We got the money from the Illinois State. However, the high-level administration level staff did not feel happy about it. And we got the money, but we could not proceed with equipment until very lately because the university administrators were concerned that this will raise the pest issues, will raise concerns from the students, staff, and faculty on campus, and from the visitors apparently as well. So those are common perspectives. And in terms of regulations, it varies. Right now, Illinois is opening up, is open-minded, and is not the front runner in terms of food waste management. About a dozen or 10 states in the United States have already banned the food waste from municipal solid waste. Illinois is not one of them, although Illinois banned yard waste, one type of landscape, and that's also organic waste. Theoretically, food waste and landscape waste could be mixed together and composted and treated together. However, they are separately regulated right now. And another complicated issue is Illinois right now does not allow people directly put the discarded food waste on the garden or farm because of health concerns. So there are some barriers in terms of reuse and recovery, and that's under discussion. In terms of existing programs, as I mentioned earlier, 97% of food discards are sent to disposal sites, meaning they are either buried or burned. There are alternative food waste options, and this is the hierarchy chart suggested by US EPA. Theoretically, or ideally, we would like to see minimum amount of food waste sent to incineration or landfill sites, and then more of them going through composting. Industrial uses feed animals, feed hungry people, and source reduction. And this pyramid actually shows intuitively what is the priority of food waste management. That is source reduction. We have to reduce the food waste volume from the source of the origin. Once we know, some of the food may be inevitably discarded or reused, then first top priority to feed hungry people and feed animals, and then go into industrial uses and composting uses. However, right now, if you check out news articles, if you check out the current industrial practice, most of them focusing on composting. This is really the hot topic right now. And as you can imagine, you will not be surprised, right? Economically, they focus on medium or large size facilities because they are the large players and they are focused. And most of the smaller generators, like us, households, residential areas, smaller cafeterias, restaurants are totally left out. The implementation is mostly on single facilities. This is how it works. For example, Osco has been donating the food. Is expired food and closely expired food with its own network to churches and to some of the shelters and food banks, meaning it's kind of one-to-one connection. And composting is also applied to single facilities, meaning there are no networked or connected activities in terms of food waste exchange, recovery, or reuse. It's mostly self-initiated single facility activities. What do we think the major gaps in both research and practice in terms of food diversion? We include the following. First is data. No one has the accurate data, and I'll show right after this. We see actually a wide range of data from limited number of surveys, which means there are a lot of uncertainties in terms of the data. And we don't have enough infrastructure. Even though Illinois proposed to ban food waste from landfill sites, we still do not have composting infrastructure. And right now it is proposed that collected food waste is sent to the composting facilities that are currently composting landscape yard waste, but we don't have any composting facilities that are specifically designed for food waste. Although there are a few scattered smaller scale ones like the plant. Have heard about the vertical farm in the south of Chicago. And as I mentioned, most of the programs, tools, and studies analysis focus on large or at least medium-sized facilities, small but clustered generators, although they may generate a small amount individually, but as a cluster, as a community, they may generate a lot. However, they are left out. We don't have the food network connections, and essentially there is lack of public awareness of the issue of the market, and that also contributes to the missing linkage of the supply and demand of food waste management and the community coalition or partnership around this issue. So in response to these unique challenges in the urban area of food waste management, we set this unique goal of this study. First, we focus on urban neighborhoods and incorporate the challenges of urban food waste management. We would include small generators and try to facilitate community partnership. Basically, we're trying to transform the challenges into opportunities. So we have seen the problems related to environmental pollution, resource waste, economic inefficiency, social disparity, community nuances, industrial plastic, and others, slightly stinky issues. And we hope to convert the current practice that is solely or primarily focused on land disposal incineration to alternative waste management approaches and diversified approaches. So we create opportunities for healthy environment, cost savings, job opportunities, and community engagement. So to connect the picture. Those are 5 major research questions, and also to the flow of our research. First, we will ask where and how much food waste is generated. Hopefully, we will generate the data references for future policy program design. Second, where and how much food waste may be potentially needed for reuse and recovery. So the first question, we're talking about supply of the market, meaning we're supplying the food waste. Second question, address the demand of food waste. Once the food waste is generated, who might need them and how much and where they may need them. The third question, what are the challenges as well as opportunities for neighborhood-based bottom-up sustainable food waste management. I noticed some faces from planning, so you're all familiar with the area of so-called participatory planning. That's also the expertise area of Dr. Teresa Roa. I hope you will show strong interest in this and collaborate with us on this in terms of participatory approach of food waste management. So this is a crucial area, how we could do this through a social learning perspective or participatory planning perspective, contributing to a better understanding of the food waste management practice. The first question, given various mix of food waste generation, I mean that will involve both quantity and quality that Professor Cruz will talk about. That's one of the key challenges for their study. What would be the most preferable option for a specific neighborhood? So essentially, this could be optimization and decision support tool for a specific neighborhood. And the fifth question, what would be the most efficient scale or cluster size of a community consortium for alternative food waste management? And in response to those 5 questions, first, we need to understand what are the causal factors related to food waste generation. We call it food waste characterization analysis. And the second, food waste generator identification. Third, food waste inventory analysis. Fourth, food waste market evaluation. And last one is the spatial correlation. So in the next few slides, I'm going to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 questions, meaning using the common data sets, tools, and methods we have known in urban planning field, how I managed to address this issue. And then I'll discuss how time-consuming, labor-intensive, and challenging it is. And then Professor Cruz is going to talk about how computer science skills and data sets could actually further refine those data and then eventually address the 5th question. All right, so I started with a pilot study of the US neighborhood. It's very intuitive, and I thought this is a mimic of a small-scale urban system because we have a variety of land uses and also that represent a variety of types of food waste generators. So largely it's institutional, but we also see residential, mostly to the west side of the campus, and also some of the commercial sites here in the north, and also on Taylor Street. And there are some also industrial uses as well. In total, there are over 1,668 businesses in the neighborhood. But in terms of the generators, may not be that much. Meaning, not every building may be generating a significant amount of food waste, but we are trying to capture all of the buildings that may potentially contribute to food waste generation. So this is one of the data set or previous studies that is showing the food waste generation factor, meaning those are the causal factors may help us estimate food generation. And you see this is the typical reference when people estimated the generation of food waste. And it's related to, for example, when it gets to restaurant, it could be correlated with their number of employees, and some of studies correlated with their the number of meals they saved, and some of them associated with the dollar value in terms of the sales. And they use that as the indirect indicator to estimate the food generation. In terms of supermarket, they typically estimate based on the size, square footage of the store market, and number of employees. For other colleges, universities, and they will get number in terms of number of meals they serve, the number of students they have on campus, and also those are the parameters. So basically, you get a general idea how the other researchers may have estimated the volume of food waste generation from different types of facilities. Just to get into a little bit more details, okay, now we zoom into the household sector. The studies vary in terms of their findings. And it could even double in terms of the range. So some studies suggest 1.3 pounds per household per day are discarded. Some estimate 20 pounds per person per month are discarded. And generally speaking, 250 pounds per household discarded. So you see a different range of studies. And then when you check into the variables, several studies found consistent findings. It's associated with income. Lower income households have lower food loss rates than higher income households, and they tend to cook more at home. So in that sense, they may actually generate more from their own kitchen, although they may not consume a lot through like the other food chain on the system. Hispanic households tend to have lower food loss rates than non-Hispanics. And there are also separate studies related to unopened and unexpired food. So this type of data will help us determine the quality of food. And this type of information will help understand the quantity of food waste generated. In terms of commercial sectors, this is the data from Restaurant Association. They estimate a restaurant can generate from 25,000 to 75,000 pounds per year. Again, it could be related to the sales, number of employees, the area, the number of meals, and things like that. It also may relate to the types of the restaurants, like fast food, large fast food chain, smaller local chains, food service or cafeteria or convenience stores. They have different rates of the food generation. At the UIC, this is the data from UIC Office of Sustainability. They do collect data monthly from 2 dining halls, one in Student Center East, one on Student Center West, in terms of the food scrap. And it's not estimated, they weighted. So every year, about 200,000 pounds of food scrap actually generated simply from just those 2 dining halls on campus, meaning residence halls are not included, hospitals also a major factor, not included. This is basically just 2 student centers, so it's really way low conservative estimate. All right, so based on those studies, these are the data I have collected. So I collected in terms of household, convenience stores, fast food restaurants, food service restaurants, supermarket, grocery stores, universities, and hospitals as the major and contributing food waste generation in the neighborhood. Those data from U.S. Census and big thanks to City of Chicago Data Portal, and most recently they have updated their data list in terms of inspected restaurant for health sanitation purpose. And for only one zip code, I was able to manually search using Google Map, basically using the search nearby function, tap in the zip code, and then the list of restaurants will show up. and you probably have used that function before, and it's not accurate. You got to have I check. Some of them actually are not restaurant, some of them are not supermarket, some of them are not grocery stores. So I do need to go through them one by one to have a quick I check of it. Yellow pages is another reference, kind of cross-reference check, and not a surprise to you probably, the data just simply do not match. And it's not off like 1 or 2, it's not just off 5 or 10, it's like hundreds. So this is the issue. And we do not know if it was because the restaurant was closed, was changed the ownership, was because it was a consolidated, it was a branch office, we don't know. But apparently those data references show very different results. This is a quick show, just using one of the data references relying on Citadel Data Portal. I would say this is probably most trustworthy data references at this moment. And then my student helped me identify this data and geocode it on the map. You see here, it probably easily identify this would be Taylor Street. So a lot of restaurants just cluster around here. And simply on this, I counted through Google search, it's over 40 restaurants already. And in total, those are about 343 food establishments, meaning they are under inspection by the city in terms of health and sanitation purpose. And in terms of facility type, I consolidated them. Initially, there were close to 200 types of food establishments. So those are more consolidated general categories. And as you can see here, food service restaurants still account the majority of the facilities that handle food, but also we do have a few other food establishments. I included the soup kitchen and the nursing homes as well, because they are both food waste generators and consumers. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that's why I didn't exclude them. In terms of demographic, and if we check out the demographic information in the zip code of 60007 compared to US average, we see the median age of this zip code is actually lower than the US, meaning we represent a younger population, probably a lot of them are students. In terms of race, I zoom into that because of the factor, the reference I found out earlier, Hispanic may tend to gender less. And in this case, we actually have a smaller percentage of Hispanic generation population compared to the US. In terms of the household size, we are smaller. In terms of occupied housing units, we are about 50% owner occupied compared to 65%. That means a lot of renters in these neighborhoods. All those factors actually contribute to the food waste generation. All right, so don't get scared off by this equation, but basically this shows how I consolidated data, how I aggregated the data. And essentially this will be the data at the block group level. And it just multiply the number of businesses by the parameters that you have seen earlier, and then I will aggregate them all together. So those are the initial modeling results. For a very conservative estimate, meaning whenever I found data that shows a wide range, I adopted the lower range of the estimates. So a lower bound estimate shows restaurants and residents in this neighborhood generate roughly 6 million pounds, or over 3,000 short tons of food waste each year. This just from the restaurants and the residents only. I mean, I didn't take into account of those grocery stores that I found have already established a relationship with other end users of the demand on the market. These the restaurants and the residents currently largely under-regulated, meaning food waste they generate literally just go to landfill site. So those are the food waste they generate towards the municipal solid waste landfills. This data itself, as a very conservative estimate, definitely demonstrates the significance of the smaller generators of food waste. and simply capturing those large generators like grocery stores, UIC campus, or industries, we probably leave out lots of food waste recycled and recovered for landfill disposal. All right, we just covered the supply, who generated them, how much they are, and talking about potential users of food scrap. Then the direct users, as you see on the pyramid, is the priority of that will be the feed hungry people, meaning go to food pantry, soup kitchen, shelter, or food banks. It could also be used for animals, so livestock farms could be useful. Some of my students ask me, we don't have the urban farms in Chicago. Why are you including there? Actually, you'll see one right next to Lincoln Park. So in case you're curious about it, if you ever been to Lincoln Park, so there is a farm right next to it. So that is a real livestock farm. You'll see pigs, cows, horses right next to it. Commercial composting sites, and I should also mention there's possibility for on-site composting, meaning you do not need to ship it, transport it. You should be able to compost it on-site. However, as I mentioned, because of regulations, it's not currently allowed, and it requires special permit to do it in Illinois. In terms of indirect uses, the compost after the commercial composting sites process it, then they could be used for landscaping and farming as a fertilizer. In that case, the phosphorus could be recycled and going back to the agricultural production process and back to the ecosystem. And also, the composting process could generate energy, and that could be used by the general public. The data source also varies, and as you can imagine, they vary again. So this map shows the potential user of food scrap within 1 mile buffer of the area. As you see here, although within the boundary of the zip code area, there are not many, but surrounding the area, there are quite a few. All right, so in terms of market, we do see several options, but there is a missing linkage between the supply and the demand. I think there seems to be potential opportunity, for example, for UIC to serve like a local anchor of food waste collection and recovery, so that we could show as a demonstration site for the neighborhoods, for the community, that together we could achieve economies of scale. However, the major question remains how to determine the best service scope or area. Say, if we publicize ourselves, advertise the opportunity, and welcome food waste from surrounding neighborhood, and who should we target? Meaning, how far can we accept? But likely you say we would not want to accept the food waste generated from 5 miles away to our university. But if we have a composting facility on site, we might. So this is not easy to answer question, especially given the unique challenges I just discussed earlier in terms of the uncertainties of the quality and the mixed types of the waste. So I left this most challenging question to Professor Isabel Cruz to answer, and then I'm going to
answer everything. My students will. Been looking at them. Okay. So Ning and I, as Ning mentioned, we have been working on an NSF grant for 1.5 years now, almost 2 years, and we mentioned there, I think we just mentioned the food problem. It was not a big part of the proposal at all. Maybe we mentioned once. And then came this opportunity of actually looking at this food waste management, and I thought it was challenging. It is extremely important and really opens a lot of interesting questions from the point of view of data management. Okay, and that's so it has been a real challenge and a real pleasure to work with Ning, investigating how our tools meet or not what is required of them. So I'm going to describe to you what are the data challenges associated with this problem. As Ning said, she processed manually data sources for 60607 zip code. Obviously, when we deal with the whole city of Chicago or Cook County or Illinois or US or the world, you know, it just doesn't scale. So it starts by what we call data extraction. So taking the data out of a lot of the public resources, okay, like HTML tables, from CSV tables. A lot of institutions are making, like the City of Chicago, are making data available. But I'm going to talk more about this, about the challenges of actually going in and taking all the data and knowing exactly what we are doing and how to make sense of all those data. Well, those data come to us in many formats and in many granularities. Some is point data, some is region data, and I'm talking just spatial. Then there's all the temporal aspect that is so important with food, because together with every scrap of food or so comes a time, an expiration for it, right? And once that deadline is over, the food is probably good for nothing. So it is quite important to see this on the timeline as well. And then when this is done, we want to match all the data sets, and we mentioned a series of data sets prior to this. All of these data sets and more, and they will come to us at all kinds of resolution, and we want, when we put all of them, we want to find the right resolution, the right grid to merge all these data sets, okay? So that is one of the important things that we are doing. And so this is data matching. What I found out is that the data matching associated with food waste management is even more interesting than what I thought, and I'm going to mention that in a couple of slides. So our problem, to me, it's a data problem. Okay, so first we need to identify the supply and demand data sets. Okay, so there are the supply resources for us: restaurants, grocery stores, households. There are the demand resources. What are the potential users? Food pantry. Ning described all that. Then there is the community, what is called community profile, demographic information, market structure, economic status, the traffic, the networks of roads, traffic loads, all of these things. So what surrounds the problem? This would be, by the way, in many cases, common to other applications as well, okay? And then there is the background information, and has to do with the fact that we are actually dealing with food. So we have a classification of food, possibly with what is, for example, the phosphorus contents of some of the food, what is the expiration associated with each kind of food, etc., of type of food. We have geospatial ontologies, so for transportation, for location, and for time. As I mentioned, time is quite important. One of the things that we need to do is to extract relevant metadata. I'm going to give you more example in terms of data extraction. We have to ensure that there is data consistency when we put everything together, that things match properly, and the considerations of time and space in that data consistency, and what is called data cleaning, making sure that we are not throwing garbage or into the data management problem. I mean, garbage from the point of view of data, right? Exactly.
Or maybe it was.
There's already too much garbage. We don't need it in our data, actually. So for data harmonization, as I said, there are spatial heterogeneities. There's point-based versus network-based versus region-based data. There's temporal, there's instant based versus interval based. Should have been instant there, not point, but anyway. And then there's all kinds of intermodal transformations to solve the heterogeneity of the resolution that I already mentioned. So bridging between the different sizes of region, different sizes of neighborhood, because actually the size of the neighborhood is a variable that we would like to play with to see what is the optimum size that we need to consider so to achieve the best use of the supply and demand equation. Right, so, and then there's temporal resolution, daily rate versus weekly rate versus biweekly versus every 10 years like census data and things like that. So we have all of this extreme heterogeneity going on, which makes life interesting. So here is some point data, some network data for roads, so that would be the distribution channels for all the waste food, etc. And here a map, which is a region map of food insecurity rates in Cook County. Okay, so as I mentioned, so I work with matching a lot. Okay, so what was fascinating about this problem is not only what we used already to do from a spatial and temporal aspect, but also this matching of supply and demand and what all this implies, right? So there is an extra level of matching going on. And so as Ning mentioned, we want to maximize our options, reuse, recycling, composting, and several more, wanting overall to minimize cost. Then for the spatial component, we want to minimize the distance between supply and demand resources and maximize the neighborhood size correlation. Okay. For the temporal component, we want to minimize the distribution time and still maximizing the options. Of course, everything is under a certain number of constraints. So this, as I see, it's a multidimensional optimization problem, and we can slice the problem in different ways. We can say for a certain cost, how do we maximize or minimize the distribution in terms of space, in terms of time. So there are different ways of slicing the problem, maintaining some. So these are all objective functions that we really are working with, but we cannot work with all of them at the same time. So that's one of the most fascinating problems. Now, this is the kind of problem, obviously, that Ning works with. I work with some parts of this problem, like networks of, for example, traffic networks. I work with them, and shortest path, and other kinds of optimization. But the reason I wanted to see this in this way is that in data management, we have what is called a competency question. So we want to make sure when we design a data management system that we will address all the potential queries that will be posed of that database, of that data management system. Okay, so in this case it's much more complex because it's not only answering queries, but it's also optimization, overall optimization. So the point is, when we put all of this together, can we in fact have the system organized in such a way that Ning will be able to run her optimization algorithms, and I will be able to run my network optimization as well. Okay. So luckily we didn't really plan to give a demo because we don't have the adapter, but I have enough here to tell you what our prototype is about. We have a prototype called Jiva, and we thought of it as a web interface both for domain experts and possibly for the public in general, okay, for the general public, with different functionalities. Okay, it's obvious that an expert and the general public will have different requirements of it. It has a layered architecture, a complex one that I'm going to show you, and we want it to be extensible to address a variety of problems. In our case, it's food management and other socioeconomic impact and applications. And we want everything to be principled, to be scalable. So we want that we will be able to address problems in an automatic fashion, and we won't have to change the whole system if we start addressing another new application. We don't want that. So here's something to do with the 60607. So the idea is that once we center on a particular area, we can see all the data in that particular area. So all the data sets associated with that. Okay, households, restaurants, everything, land use, census data, economic data, everything there. Okay, and everything can be queried once we focus on a particular area. What you see here is that once we identify some variables so that we want to visualize, and we want, well, first of all, we want to integrate and so on, but once everything is integrated, we can visualize how different variables change in relation to one another, okay? So this illustrates several parts of the interface. There's a query window where we can say exactly what kinds of associations we want to have displayed, and these are the different kinds of visualizations that are currently available. Okay, so GIVA stands for Geospatial Data Integration, Visualization, and Analytics. This is the layered architecture I already mentioned. There's the part of data extraction, data translation. The extraction of the scheme of the organization of the data is here. Syntactic and semantic matching, the spatial temporal matching that I mentioned. The application layer that supports everything, and on top of this, even more visualization and analytics. And this is all supported by a special VBMS, a triple store. There's an API running through this, and there are also analytics algorithms from the point of view of machine learning. We use machine learning for many of these, for all of these boxes actually here, okay, and uses a lot of power doing certain things. So there are three components: data and metadata extraction, syntactic and semantic matching, spatial and temporal harmonization and matching. So this is about that data is really contained in a variety of formats. To give an idea, if you look at data from the web, there are over 100 million tables, high quality tables that we can actually use, okay? And this includes even tables that we know exactly where they are, what they are, for example, NASA, tables from NASA that we are using for precipitation, but we don't want every time we go to NASA to write a script to absorb that data. Those data. We want to have an overall environment to read from NASA, from USGS, etc., etc. But when we grab these tables, we want to know what are they about and how to make sense of them, basically. So this is what I call how to extract the semantics of the data. And to give an idea, these data are in the format of semi-structured, okay? So there's some hierarchical organization. It is not a relational database where everything is well defined. It is not natural language, although we also deal with natural language. One of my students here is doing that, Iman. But right now I'm talking about this kind of data that you see all the time in HTML formats, okay? And the reason we care about this is because of its wide availability, government reports, public health, transportation, and so many more things. Which brings the need for integrating all of these data. Okay, so So to give an idea, this is one of our tables that illustrates so many things. This would be the structure of the table, which is hierarchical. These are the different concepts. Then what is this table about, really? Well, what is the table about is in the caption. And it's easy for us to see this is about water stations, but what we want to do all of this automatically. Okay, that's the idea, or at least semi-automatically. So we have all these modifiers, average, maximum, recent, whatever it means. Then we have the values, we have the units. Sometimes the units are on the header, sometimes they are in the cells. There's some values that we don't know, and there's a lot of temporal information. And for many things, as I said, time is extremely important. We certainly want to put together data that coincides in time, otherwise data don't tell us anything. So, you know, because what we want is to be able to extract automatically, to be able to query out of that table directly, okay, without having a human reading it and without having a human process it manually, okay? And we do this through a conjunction of things, natural language processing. We use machine learning to verify some rules that allow us to extract the structure of the tables. And so basically what we want is to construct a graph, we call it a semantic graph, that tells us from those tables how the different concepts are interlinked, right? So river reports has as a sub-concept north coast. North coast has a modifier central, lower. The modifier for river reports is that the data is taken daily. So we have many of these rules. This is work by my student Venkat Raghavan, and we have all these semantic graphs that allow us to finally build an understanding of what that table was about, but automatically. Okay, so once we know exactly what each of those cells mean, what is the units, what is the timestamp, and so on, we can, this is just for one table, but we can put together many tables and bridge across many sites, from USGS to NASA to the Chicago portal, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that it's all going to be manual. Just a little bit, I knew I wouldn't have so much time, but to tell a little bit about what is this semantic, syntactic and semantic matching, is that once even we know what, so a cell is about precipitation, in another database it's rainfall, what is the connection between the two? Well, the connection is that precipitation contains rainfall, and that flu is a synonym to influenza, so that we can actually bridge across. So, and the importance of ontology matching is that it's being used in medicine. USGS is making use of ontologies for almost everything now. And we have been leaders in this field for some time. Now, the future in my mind includes what we are doing now, obviously, spatial and temporal matching and analytics, everything integrating with this bridging across different data sets. And it's exactly the spatial and temporal harmonization. So different kinds, oops, this is, that was a wrong slide, it doesn't matter. It was not supposed, oops, sorry. Okay, what did I do here? Okay, was not supposed to have United Kingdom, I think. Something got lost somewhere, but it is this idea that I told you already. This would be, for example, sensors of temperature that are equally spaced, and this would be water gauges along the waterways in Illinois and so on, and all of these have different spatial and temporal embeddings. So as I mentioned, when we put things together, we want to find the best possible tessellation that makes sense for emergent data sets, and that's what one of my students did. So, okay, so I finished and Ming is going to conclude.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Isabel. All right. I know we are running out of time, so we are finishing up. Just one last slide, the summary slide, food for thought. So it's a lot of information here, both abstract and theoretical and practical. I hope by the end of the presentation you get away the point that food waste management is really critical when it connects to sustainability issues. Proper management requires to have a better understanding and awareness of the issue which is currently missing. Urban food waste management is different from food waste management issues in rural or suburban areas. So it does present both challenges and opportunities. We could transform those challenges to opportunities. Lack of policy support data references definitely a major issues right now, and I hope studies like Professor Cruz and I have been doing here could help contribute to the missing data gaps. And now, as you have seen here, the knowledge, methods, analytic framework of these two fields, very distinct fields, people may rarely connect us together, but we believe could contribute to the research practice and educational programs related to food waste management. So we would like to conclude with a sincere appreciation of the sponsorship and the support from GCI. We would like to thank our graduate students and collaborators who help us put forward this research. And now we are open for questions. Sure, go ahead.
Yes, for the alternative methods, you said that feeding hungry people and animals, like that should also be considered as an alternative. But do you consider the time factor, because like the food, for composite and all those waste, even if the food is 1 day old or even 10 days old, it doesn't matter. But for feeding these, for this alternative solution for feeding animals or humans,
Yeah.
so the time, how do you?
That's a great question. Professor Cruz and Anas and I have been discussing it back and forth several rounds. So right now, none of the studies have really advanced that far, meaning most of them just simply handle composting needs. So when composting is the primary solution, as you probably would imagine, they will not care about the expiration date. They just need to get the food.
Yes.
Right. So the timing factor isn't currently incorporated in any of the current practice programs. However, we did discuss about this, and you have seen on one of the slides talking about optimization. So we talk about this, and the goal is to optimize the uses, right? For those unopened, canned, non-perishable food, then likely they will have longer shelf life, and then in that case, it will allow more options, literally speaking, right? It's those that pre-consumer or post-consumer food that are still edible is that get most time sensitivity, and this is what we try to capture. But again, this is really not just a single variable issue. It's very complex, and also it's not stable. Meaning, even if you target one generator, either at a grocery store or a restaurant, the food quality and the quantity generated today may quite be different from what they will generate tomorrow at a Saturday weekend time. So this is not a one-time static question, and that's why I need high-performance computing help. That's a good question.
It is interesting. I was talking to a colleague of mine from Brown the other day, from Brown University, and he said some of these issues of time are the same as for flights, okay, for optimization of flights and so on, because once the flight takes off, that is a wasted seat, right? So there's a lot of optimization going on, which is in a way similar to food. Of course, that's a very difficult problem in itself.
Once you get food served on the table.
Sorry?
Once you get food served around the table,
Right.
on a plate, no matter you eat it or not.
Yeah, but the flights is about the same problem because you are going to assign seats at different costs and so on.
Buffet, let's talk about the buffet style dining.
All this comes back to food.
Right, but but it's what Ning says, that's a difficult optimization problem and and it involves a lot of policy as well, right?
Yeah, apparently you see the regulations, the ordinance will have a large impact on this, meaning what options will be actually feasible.
Actually feasible. That's
And that will be, that will be evolving as well, meaning the policy could change anytime.
That's right, and then the options change and everything
Change
changes.
too.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Do you have anything published anywhere on sort of your initial thinking about the model, or
Not
do you have, is your proposal available anywhere?
I got a conference abstract accepted as a waste management, air and waste management association conference. So the conference will be in June.
So you'll write a paper.
Yes.
Yeah, but we
Did you get it from Teresa? Later?
Yeah, I think after June, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we definitely still have to write about our findings and so on. Now I think we have looked at the problem in a unique way. I don't know if we want to release what our thoughts so far. I mean, or we want to make more progress.
We'll make, methodology,
Right.
paper, I think would be great. I mean, and I'm thinking about doing agent-based modeling around issues of domestic violence, and how do we think about, and all the ways that you're layering things and thinking about the data, I think would be really important for us to think about that and add that into the agent-based modeling approach, because it's similar in terms of space and decision-making and what are the inputs to the violence,
Yeah.
and what's the supply and demand of the violence. I think it's,
So ABM, agent-based modeling, has been widely used in solid waste management in general.
right.
Food waste management is unique, I would say even more challenging because of the lighter lifespan of the
And violence is the
issue.
same, has similar time issues.
So I definitely think will be a valuable contribution of the method.
So what would be the supply and demand of the violence problem?
Well, the supply is people's, men often, not all men, and not only men, but men's desire to have control and power, and women's desire to not be under control and power. And then you have police stations that are providing services, other service providers that are also connected, criminal justice systems that are also part of the whole thing. So it's a I think similarly complex system like you guys are describing here.
So the problems that are generated and the people can solve the problems, that will be the supply and demand?
Yes,
Very
exactly.
interesting.
Yes.
Because for all the problems that that we have been considering under the NSF grant, I haven't perceived some of the other problems as a supply and demand, as this matching really. And it finally got highlighted as the size of so what is the granularity at which you want to solve? Obviously, you want to solve the problems within certain communities, within certain neighborhoods. I'm sure the same thing for your problem.
Yes.
And, so what is the optimum size for that, for considering it? And of course, it could go over the borders of that neighborhood, but only sporadically.
Exactly.
Yeah, so-
I mean, as you were doing this, I'm thinking, and we're actually going to be submitting a proposal September 3rd to NSF for the
That's a
geography.
long time away.
No, but we need the time to
No,
figure it
I know.
out.
To NSF?
Yeah.
Which program would that
In
be?
geography, and
wow.
spatial sciences.
Let me know if you can help.
I will. I will. I'm working with Tim and the director of research for Great Cities. So we're trying to really get it. We were just working all morning on it, so it's fresh in my mind.
Best luck. Yeah, if any of our thoughts promote will help, let us know.
And if we were to be able to get a little bit of, if we would send you a draft and if you could give us any thoughts, and it won't be, it can't be that long, it's only 50 pages, but well, I would love to be able to
50
send them.
pages.
15, not 50. 15.
It's enough, right?
Yes,
It's
single
enough.
space.
Yes.
Having fun.
But
Yeah.
I was shocked that for many studies that is actually the job of graduate students to extract the data, clean the data, then the study is performed, then somebody remembers, oh, we need also another data set. And then goes again, the whole process starts again.
And being able to connect the data, and just as you described, I think that was,
That is sort of the dream, but there are many things that we can do. The dream is that you say, I want to link this new data set, and it just gets ingested and linked. And the quality of the links is guaranteed, as much as possible. That is the dream, that the ingestion is all automatic and almost instantaneous. In reality, in some cases, one is better off allowing a user feedback kind of interaction, where if you do your best, you do your best to connect the data, but you may have a certain point-wise connections that you are not sure, and then you ask the user verifies, it gets propagated to similar connections and so on. And I think that's perfectly fine, because to make sure that the quality of the connected data is as high as possible. And that's often not considered, actually. People just say, oh, we connect the data, because it's very easy to connect the data.
right, but is it a legitimate connection?
Exactly. I think you understand the problem, because you deal with data.
Yes,
But people are just talking in general, they don't understand that, computer scientists, that they don't understand sometimes that it's not just a question of simple string matching, that you have to really look at it.
So you talked about creating a spatial, through Jiva you pick a space and then it'll pull all the data for that. How are you guys going to optimize a neighborhood space for this problem, given that a lot of the data are not linked to that exact geography? Maybe it's zip code or aggregate data from a larger geographical range.
Actually, that would be one of the most difficult problems,
Yeah.
really, right? So the way I see that is that I don't think we want necessarily squares of data, right, or polygons. What we would like is administrative areas, right? Could be parishes, could be whatever, right? So, and then seeing, trying to running studies at different granularities. So is it granularity county, or is it municipality? What is it? So, but I think once we have everything figured out, that is something that we can play with. Now, as Ning said, there are so many variables to play with, right? So we can fix certain things and then change the granularity of the administrative boundary, right? But we believe that this neighborhood problem is quite an important one.
This is actually
Definition.
related to what we have here.
Right.
So you can get a chance to talk about.
Yeah,
But
so,
basically, yeah.
well, no, go ahead.
Just in plain language, what are we going to do about it? Basically, just to automatically identify the optimal size of the what we call the service area that will show the highest correlation. That is in plain language how it works.
So I even think that some of it will be it could be hierarchical in the sense we decide on municipality and so on, and within there, we have another grid which addresses just the data itself. Right, but, you know, so boundaries is really something interesting. The other day I was thinking a problem where it is not land use. Land use is determined by parcels that are well defined. Land cover is not. So the boundaries of land cover are non-administrative. So here is another kind of boundary that again has to be considered, and it could destroy everything else. The hierarchical aspect of municipalities and counties and state and so on. But being able to play with different boundaries and so on is extremely important. Right. So this is anyway, I think there's a lot of interesting work to be done. And I thought that this food problem is so compelling that I want really to investigate what the availability of certain foundations to fund this. Could be for your violence also the same thing. Right? I mean, it's such compelling problems that need access to data.
And this is a growing problem with the food issue in so many ways, and violence against women is also increasing dramatically.
And if it doesn't increase, it's already so bad, everything.
Right, exactly.
We don't need it to increase to make it important. It's already important enough. I had a question because I have not seen that. Are you sure that between the 900 calories and 1400 calories, people don't eat more than they used to? From 74 now. So you consider that 500 calories are lost somewhere.
Meaning unnecessary. That's
No, I know, but it's. I think people are eating more, but I mean, you know.
yeah. I was checking on the history of food. I deleted some of the slides there, but I was checking on the flyer. Actually, food waste reduction is not a new slogan, and during the war period. World War I and World War II, and we already had a lot of flyers basically saying, don't waste the food, food is our weapon. And that have a different purpose. And after that, when I check on history, and the country basically advocated completely new culture, freedom of speech, freedom of
Choice.
fear, freedom of choice, freedom of hunger, freedom of kind of self discipline. Basically, you can do whatever you want. And also, one important issue is freedom of poverty. And that time, the so-called freedom of poverty has a very different belief, as probably we will think right now. Basically, at that time, people believe if you are capable of doing this, and if you purchase more, if you consume more, basically you are contributing to the economy, and you are helping other people fight with like unemployment, jobs, and income, and that helps contribute to reducing social inequality. So if you cannot consume that much, then if you still buy them, that's okay, because once you spend the money will be contributing to a lot of low-income people.
I don't
That had a kind of a different cultural root.
So it's the consumption that's driving, but the consumption starts and stops for this model that you're suggesting at actual purchase, not at the actual use of the product. And so if it's wasted, that's okay.
I don't know how it was in the US, but I can tell you the people who lived through the Second World War, they don't throw away food as of today. So
No, in Russia
they
too.
don't.
Russia, I lived in Russia for 2 years, and I was just amazed at the frugalness of the reuse of everything, and nobody throws out any food, and here we do so much.
It's very different, and when I try to cite some statistics, meaning how much we waste here compared to, for example, how much we waste in China. But you may find it surprising to see the statistics that show actually almost equivalent amount of wasted. And basically here, mostly we waste more in terms of pre-consumer waste, meaning a lot of during the production and consumption stages. Like I just mentioned, just going back to the example of the salary, when we just chop off the top, chop off the bottom, and just only using the top part of it. Like in developing countries, apparently they'll eat them all. And what is wasted a lot more in developing countries like here in the U.S. and other European countries is the leftovers. For example, is the Asian culture that if we treat a guest as a host, then we're supposed to see a lot of leftovers on the table. If the guest eats up everything, that means, well, I didn't serve you food. So there is a culture reason behind it. And also because in developing countries, it's almost like when we talk about low-income households, actually we cook a lot. When we cook a lot does not mean we will save the waste from restaurants. Because if we have the restaurant processed food, likely they may have certain mechanisms and then relatively, as I mentioned earlier, if you check out the statistics surrounding food waste in manufacturers, like industries, they have found out their way to treat the food waste because it costs them money to send waste to landfill sites, right? So they have to figure out something. Sometimes they just give away those stuff without any revenue, but they save actually, right? They save the money for the waste that's sent to landfill sites. So if the food is processed in large scale manufacturing industries, then likely it was already solved or handled more efficiently than we ourselves do as residents at home. In that case, the efficiency level actually will be different. So it's really a complex issue, and it's not directly related to just either economic status or availability of farms or food access. This is beyond that. It's a whole lot complex, and that's why it makes it so interesting. Jackson, I'm not sure we are actually running into time already.
Yeah, we do need to go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Teresa, I had to run out to a meeting, but
Okay.
on behalf of Great Citizens too, we want to thank you for this great
Well,
presentation.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's great to see
Really.
two different departments on campus coming together to work on one problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
hope we'll continue for years to come.
Yeah.
So your students never graduate. Please do not go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.